Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to Enter the Metaverse, a topic that would be impossible to cover in 45 minutes, but we are going to try valiantly to share whatever insights it is we can offer on this wide-ranging set of topics. Before we get started, I wanted to say a huge thank you to Tezos and Blockhouse for putting this amazing series on. Every time something like this is going on, it's a good idea to make sure you're there. So first of all, a big round of applause for them. And now, I'm going to throw to these amazing panelists to introduce themselves. I'm going to start from my left to my right. So Laurie, I don't know what you can see, but you're immediately to my right. So I'd love to open to you to introduce yourself.
I can see everything, and sorry I'm not there with everybody, and I'm here, and for whatever it's worth, everybody, we just lost power. So thank God for generators, so thank God for technology, not quite the same, but I want to thank everybody for coming. This was such an exciting opportunity to be part of this, and we'll share more of that during the panel. I guess I was supposed to say my name, Laurie Pressman, Vice President, Pantone Color Institute. Sorry. I mean, the fact that I got back on and reconnected, I'm just a little, a little frazzled for the next 2 minutes, so apologize.
Sasha, over to you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sasha Stiles. I'm a poet. I'm also a visual artist, and I'm an artificial intelligence researcher as well. I've been writing poetry pretty much my entire life, and just kind of am obsessed with words and books and libraries and things like that. But I'm at the same time very interested in technology and thinking about the future. And I happen to be friends with a number of robots and hang out with disembodied neural nets on a regular basis. And all of these sort of disparate experiences and interests sort of conspired to bring me into the metaverse for the first time at the end of 2020. That led me to meet a number of really exciting crypto artists and curators. I started minting my first poems as NFTs at the beginning of 2021, about a year ago, I guess. And yeah, and then at the end of last year, I also co-founded a crypto poetry gallery called The Verseverse with two other writers, Callan Iwamoto and Ana Maria Caballero, and have just been sort of exploring the potential for literature on the blockchain with my amazing community of poets who are in Tezos and on other blockchains as well. And thank you so much for having me here today.
Hi everyone, I'm Sudhakar Potineni. I'm head of blockchain at The Gap Inc. Pretty fortunate to be here and thankful for the Tezos community that have accepted and welcomed us with warm hearts. We just launched our first NFT experience pass in the month of January, and it's been awesome reception globally, and we are looking forward to kind of expanding the program. So looking forward to that.
Well, let's pick up there. So this panel is titled Enter the Metaverse. So I think stopping in with each of you about what entering the metaverse means. So in your case, what does it mean for the Gap to be entering the metaverse? And what's maybe exciting to you when you think about the relationship of brands and creators kind of moving into this new realm?
Yeah, I think we are at a very interesting time right now, especially with the metaverse. Like, there is the amount of technology that's enabling new experiences, like, for example, all the way from AR, VR to mixed reality that's coming through. I think it will definitely change the way customers engage with different brands and creators, right? Like, so I think the two interesting areas where we'll see significant impact would be, I would say, product discovery and customer engagement, right? Just think of it like, for example, with how cool would it be, like, if a customer can look at a jacket in a 3D experience. Like, I'm sure, like, if you guys have been around the booths here, you would have seen the first booth over there, like, where they were creating the 3D experience, the 3D avatars, right? How cool would it be, like, if you could kind of look at your jacket on your avatar, and being able to see it with few gestures of like, how would this jacket look on a sunny beach? How would it look in a dim lit restaurant? Or like, how would the same jacket on you look in a basically in an office setting and before you make the purchase, right? So I think it's gonna the whole product discovery experience of like how customers engage in the metaverse, like with the technologies that are unlocking, is going to be pretty interesting, and that's something that we want to be in the forefront and be able to kind of be part of the technology as this is happening and learn with everyone and then being able to deliver it for our customers. So I think that's how I think about like when it comes to metaverse and like how brands can kind of tap into it. That's one angle of it. And second thing is like as it gives new opportunities for brands to be able to tell the product story, right? So take an example of, for example, a hoodie that we just recently launched, and customers being able to look at the hoodie and being able to look at almost at the fiber level and being able to say, hey, where was this cotton sourced from, right? So and being able to say, today Gaping partners with a lot of Pace factories where we, Pace is basically a program that Gaping participates where we directly work with the factories to enable the women and women who are working in those factories and enabling them with personal advancement and career engagement opportunities. So being able to tell the story of the brand by looking at the product in a whole immersive experience and being able to tell, like, for example, the artists who are behind creating those and the designers who are able to create it in a whole immersive experience is going to be something that we can unlock in a whole metaverse kind of an experience. So that's something we are excited about, and I think those are all some of the options that will open up as we look at product discovery and customer engagement in the metaverse.
There's so much exciting stuff there, thinking about how digital twins and simulation allow us to engage with products in a totally different way and to understand them. Like if I'm a customer wanting to, as you said, see how something will look on me on my beach vacation when I've been working out for months to make sure that I look good, and then now I can see like, okay, good, in fact I will look good, or actually no, I'm glad I didn't get that. But also sort of revealing the sort of hidden worlds that we don't necessarily always see, like as you said, the fibers of the cloth. There's something coming up for me that sort of correlates, Sasha, to your work when we think about technology. You reference hanging out with robots. I'd love if you could give a little bit more context about what technology is. By the way, amazing book. Everybody should get it. Comes out next month. But if you could tell everybody a little bit more about technology, but also there's this other aspect of actually working with machines in the metaverse that's not been possible up to this point. So if you could shed a little light on that wild world.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you very much for that plug. So yes, as part of my my hanging out with robots, I do a lot of work with an AI collaborator. My poet alter ego, whose name is Technology, and the word technology in my mind is a fusion of technology and then elegy, sort of a nod to the poetic elegy, which is sort of a word that evokes something of nostalgia for things that maybe we're losing and sort of honors things that we see as fleeting or that are passing through. So that's the name of my alter ego, and also the book that Jesse mentioned is coming out next month, which is a combination of poems and AI language experiments, and also art that I've published on the blockchain, which now is getting published in the real world as well. So I do a lot of work with natural language processing. I do a lot of work, again, collaborating with machines and creating generative text experiments and really playing with language in ways that are a little bit beyond the bounds of what I have myself encountered in conventional literary magazines, or even in the poetry section of the bookstore. And in fact, a lot of the work that I've done, a lot of the poetry that I've made with technology is not confined to a printed page. It's actually multimedia poetry. It's media-rich spoken word, where there is generative text created by AI, plus original music, plus my human voice, plus animated elements, seeing words come to life. There are aspects of my work that I've brought to life in installations, so they're kind of hybrid, where they're created with digital tools, but then you're seeing them in the real world and kind of experience them and walking through. So these are all things that, again, I haven't really been able to find a good home for in the traditional publishing world as it is. right now. And for me, being able to get into the metaverse and bring my poetry into the metaverse is an opportunity to get to sort of break through the boundaries of what I thought poetry was, or what I think it means to be an author, and to do things that I never would have been able to do in any other way. So now I'm able to actually, also be a technologist. I'm also able to be an artist and bring things to life in 3 dimensions. I'm able to collaborate with coders and create all sorts of things that, again, wouldn't live on a printed page. So. Yeah, working with technology, and then also working with a whole suite of digital tools in different ways has been really revelatory for me as a writer. And again, I don't think that I would be doing the things that I'm doing now if I hadn't sort of entered the crypto realm, and I hadn't really found a home of other writers in the metaverse who could sort of help me workshop things the way that I would in the real world, and really kind of think together as a collective about what the future of poetry could be on the blockchain. How can we sort of look at the way language is evolving now, the way we communicate with each other now? And I mean, we can talk more about it later, but there's so many potential avenues I see for poetry that actually I think dovetail really nicely with what the Gap is doing and what Pantone's doing, and the idea that you can, you could turn a poem into a social media filter or something like that. You could turn a poem into an NFT that someone could basically select and wear the way that they would a Gap hoodie, because it fits them and they want to wear it around, and they don't want to have a poem that's on their bookshelf hidden away. Or you could potentially you could create or you could buy a poem NFT from an author that you love and personalize it by choosing a customized color palette. And maybe you have, the poem is rendered in Very Perry or whatever Pantone shade, you're kind of digging at the moment. And there's actually a really amazing poet whose Twitter handle is Encapsuled, who's doing some of these things right now and has created a marketplace for customized poetry. So there's a lot, and it's really an untapped, I think, zone right now. So I'm having a lot of fun playing in the metaverse with language.
Amazing. And segues perfectly to you, Laurie. Hopefully, we've gotten through the frazzled power out moment.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
all
honestly, it
generative AI.
happened, I would say at 5:43 my time, 2 minutes before this panel was supposed to start. So it was just the timing of it. So I really do apologize to everybody. I think, first of all, it's really fascinating for me to listen to you both because I'm learning something. Color is its own huge space. And I think from our point of view, we see, again, strictly as it relates to color, the ways in which the metaverse opens up the universe, because we know the gamut of color is quite different in the physical world than it is in the digital world. So we look to it immediately as color possibilities. 20 years back, when we think about what the virtual world was with Second Life, and it never really came to be in the same way we're seeing now. And I think from our point of view, as we watch the way everybody's living today, almost seamlessly crossing between this real and digital world, the way designers are working with color because we were forced to because of the pandemic, and spending so much more time, and the intimacy we now have with technology, we do see the metaverse and the digital world becoming that much more important. Whether it's people creating avatars, whether it's interacting with product purchases, as you say, whether it's interacting with poetry in different ways. I think the opportunities are endless and boundless with what 3D presents to us. I think one of the areas that are a particular fascination for me is on the fashion side, quite honestly, and how many companies are investing into participating in the metaverse at all different levels of the market. And there was some survey that I saw from Statista, I believe it was, and it said something along the lines of 74% of American adults are already or considering building lives in the virtual world. That to me is mind blowing. Am I buying clothing to wear on this Zoom call because I'm not going out, for example? So to me, I think there's a lot of endless possibilities for color, for the design community who's using our tools. And at Pantone, we listen and we lead forward. So we continue to explore the opportunities in the metaverse.
And on that note, you just announced an NFT exploration via Very Perry, and I'd be really curious. Obviously, it's a good year for it, but I also be curious from your perspective if there's any significance with Very Perry as the color that is sort of becoming Pantone's first sort of metaversal color.
Absolutely. So to give you, I don't want to drone on and on here. Pantone Color of the Year was created in 1999 to draw attention to the relationship between culture and color. The goal for us, it's an educational program to highlight what's taking place in the global culture at a moment in time, is expressed and then reflected into the language of color because it is a language. The past couple of years, it's all been about transformation. Um, for everything that we do, it accelerated so many of the changes that we were already seeing. And we saw so many people find a will and determination to look at alternative approaches and solutions, new ideas, new methods, blah, blah, blah. I think we all know this. There's been systemic change in our own personal worlds. There's been so much change, which then, of course, leads to massive change. We're shaken from the roots. We're looking at new imaginative perspectives, reimagining our future to rewrite our lives. So there's much more to the messaging for Very Perry. But when you look at this color, it has the qualities of the blues, the faithfulness and the constancy, the energy and the excitement of red. It is all about a carefree confidence, a daring curiosity. It's the color that projects a sense of futurism and a color that we feel exemplifies how in our world today, inventiveness, personal creativity is being expressed and established in a whole new way. So that was certainly critical to our thinking, how we've been living, as I mentioned before, with technology. We did before, but today it's so intimate. Our phones, our VR headsets, whatever it is, it's become so much more critical. There's gaming uh, that we're seeing being expanded to. So I think when I look at Pantone Color of the Year, the qualities of the color, any partnership we create, especially through my side, which is all about the selection and global trends and what have you, has to organically reflect the message. And our focus was so much more on transformation this year and the influence of digital. And what better way to be able to bring that forward with this color that presents a sense of futurism was to have a color that would present well in the digital space. And then from there, uh, work with Tezos, work with Polygon 1993 on artwork that was expressed to create our first NFT. I don't think we could have done it any better. So I'm thrilled that we were able to create this partnership.
This is really like all three of your responses just immediately, first of all, amazing. And second of all, they're really making me think about the people side of the metaverse, like the part that's been, true for several 100,000 years at least of our species. One way that I've taken to thinking about the metaverse is like the way we think about light being a particle in a wave, is that there's the enabling technologies and there's the sort of softer stuff, the people stuff that sort of correlates in the new practices. And so we're really getting at this idea of, people and soft practices rather than the enabling technologies in our sort of first comments right out of the gate. What are the attitudinal shifts that you've experienced in yourself when you think about your entry into the metaverse, but also the attitudinal shifts that you've maybe had to be part of in your workplace or with your peers or in your respective communities who maybe look at the metaverse with a certain degree of skepticism or that it's maybe just a buzzword? And this is to anyone. I'll start with my colleagues in the room to hand the baton.
Yeah, I think that's a very important perspective, right? So I think when you look at metaverse, I think especially take the last 1 year, right? So there have been fascinating projects that have been launched that have the community element of it at the core of it, right? So example, like when we took Gap Threads side of things, like Gap Threads, which is our NFT experience that we recently launched, the community was kind of key. Like when we thought about like how we would go about it, we chose Tezos because of the huge community aspect of it and the core community that's behind it. And even when we designed the program, it was very important for us to kind of live to our brand values of inclusivity and sustainability side of things. So when we think of from a like how we went about it, we partnered with different artists, and kind of being able to create a platform where we are enabling different artists to kind of express it. So we created a very limited edition hoodie that was basically co-designed with an artist, where there was an artistic expression, with providing a platform for the artist to kind of bring his community along and being able to express his design in collaboration with us, and providing a platform for them to kind of reach globally by activating the Tezos community, right? So as we think of it, I think the community is kind of key for it. And just to kind of kind of taking a step back on that, Jesse, when I think of Metaverse, I think there are 3 C's that are kind of important: community, co-creation, and collaboration, right? So I think these are going to be 3 key ones that we need to think of. Community is going to be key. You need to kind of make sure people who are investing in you, or people who are participating in, how you are taking care of them, right? So, and that could be as simple as kind of giving. Right now, we are seeing privileged access as being one of them, but it can, on the other end of the spectrum, it could be like a community-driven initiative, where a community is actually voting with their own coins, or with their own votes to kind of decide what is the product feature that you're going to build. Or a good example would be Interpop, right? So they were kind of showing off the comics, the experience that they have built, where the community is kind of key to them to kind of and deciding how does the story evolve, who are the main characters that kind of evolve in it. So that's kind of key. So I think community is going to be key part of it. Collaboration is going to be important in Metaverse. We need to kind of, today we talk about multiple different experiences or niche ecosystems being created. But for it to truly manifest, when we think of the ideology, where a customer owns something on the blockchain, he can kind of easily kind of take that particular asset across different ecosystems. So collaboration is going to be kind of key for different ecosystems to enable that, right? We recently saw the announcement around Dogami kind of partnering with Sandbox. How cool is that, right? So I think that's kind of key from a collaboration perspective. And co-creation, right? So this is where how do brands, or how do you, different creators who kind of look at it, how do we co-create new experiences, right? So we saw in the panel, if you have been through the booths today, if you started all the way, we had a booth where we are able to create a 3D avatars of people, and there's a booth right next to it where they were creating the 3D, the kicks or the shoes, right? So how cool would it be to kind of co-create an experience where the avatars are able to wear the shoes, right? So, and be able to try it out. So I think those 3 C's are going to be important, and I think that kind of emphasizes what you're saying around community being kind of key. So it's a change in mindset of how brands think about it, how do you bring people along, how do you provide those unique experiences. I think that's going to be key.
Okay, that's amazing. That's a lot to take in. So interesting. So let me be a word nerd for 1 second. So when I hear the word metaverse, I always think about where it came from, and we're all using it now, and it feels so it's now and it's the future. But so the word itself was coined in the early 90s by Neil Stephenson, right? So it was actually a term coined by a writer, by a sci-fi writer. And I think about it a lot because I think a lot about the etymology of words and kind of digging down to what they really mean. And meta, of course, is this prefix that means above or beyond or higher, and it just kind of gestures to something bigger. And then verse obviously is coming from this word universe, right? Which, when you kind of take it back to the original, comes from this idea of many things coming together and becoming a whole. And I think, to me, when I think about the metaverse, those 2 things really resonate a lot with me. I feel like on the one sense, I'm very I tend, I guess, to think more about myself and my community as meta poets rather than crypto poets or NFT poets, because I kind of like the connotations there, that we're really kind of pushing through some preconceived boundaries, and we're creating something that is a little bit more limitlessness. It has more limitlessness to it in poetics, and that sense that anything might be possible. So to me, that kind of I think it affects like my personal practice really, and just thinking about the fact that I no longer, have to think about a poem this way or a book this way, and that it can be all sorts of things. So I think that has been a really profound change for me personally, and for a lot of the writers that I know. I think on a slightly bigger level, there's this really interesting thing happening where we've seen with crypto art and other areas, we've really seen how artists are becoming empowered by being able to sell their art. I think the same is true for writers. And again, we're kind of a small group of writers on the blockchain right now, but there's huge potential for the blockchain to really kind of shake things up there and really empower writers and poets who've never maybe been able to make a living doing what they're doing. Poetry, I'll speak from experience, is not a lucrative profession. And in the time that I've been involved in crypto, I've been able to make many, 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 many times more than what I've ever made in my entire life publishing in literary journals. And it's not that much, but it's a lot more than what I would have made. That's given me the opportunity to give back, to buy from other poets, to buy from other artists, to put things into the ecosystem, to fund ideas that we all have to do bigger and better things. So that I think is incredibly important. This idea of empowering people who have really important things to say and who maybe haven't had a chance to say them because the publishing industry or whomever hasn't let them have that moment on the stage. So there's that. I also think there's one other element that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's again sort of from personal experience, and I think this is sort of interesting to me, but also indicative of maybe a bigger sea change, which is that I'm going through this process now of publishing a book. I'm working very closely with my publisher, Black Spring Press Group, and they've gotten very, very interested in what I'm doing on the blockchain. And they're a traditional press, and they don't have any experience here, but they're really intrigued by the potential for what their writers might be able to do, what their editors might be able to do if we kind of put our heads together and figure out, all right, well, what can we do to push things forward? How can we talk to technologists, talk to folks who are creating smart contracts, and all put our heads together and really sort of reinvent what a book might be or what distribution might be. And I think that's interesting. And the last thing I'll say about that, which kind of always tickles me, is that I recently was able to actually onboard my publisher, both onto Tezos and onto Ethereum. But it was a really sort of amazing thing for me to realize that now they're on the blockchain with me. I'm now including them in my contracts. When I'm publishing something, I'm now paying my publisher royalties, which who would have thought that would be possible? So it's been changing a lot of things for me as a writer.
Laurie?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to totally fall short on this one in my personal life. Like, I don't know yet where this will mean for me personally. I go back to what both people are saying in terms of experience. I think we've been on this move for greater experience in the world. I think of retail in particular, which has been all about experience. And I think this takes us to a whole new level that I can't even begin to realize what that's going to feel like. This whole ability to be able to immerse ourselves in ways that we have not been able to until this point. And I think from a Pantone point of view, here too, we're first walking into this and what this means on a very base level. Does it mean, creating a color palette that's only available in the metaverse because we don't have to worry about those colors being standardized in the real world? I mean, that's really right off the top. And I'm not really privy to say much more because there's still so many things on the table for where we need to go. But I don't know. I think it's a whole other world that we're first learning about. And yet I think what fascinates me personally is you're going to see generations of people growing up with this. And this is the way they'll be able to see life. And it's almost, a before and after type of thing. I think it's that groundbreaking.
Yeah, there really is this kind of, in many ways, this collapse of categories. Sasha and I were on a Twitter Spaces recently where we sort of got into this and where some of the people were bringing this up. I want to dial back on something that you brought up, Sasha, which is the metaverse being coined by Neil Stephenson.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's that, I mean, I'm learning so much. I think I'm more enraptured listening to both of you. No, because you're coming at this from such a different place than I would be, than Pantone would be. So I love it. Thank you.
Learning is amazing. Learning is like the best feeling.
Especially from creatives.
Yeah,
Sorry.
fair enough. But you know, Snow Crash does not depict the world in a positive light. And the metaverse is, in many ways, an escape from a broken world. How
Yes.
are you? How are you thinking about this sort of inversion, where now, as you mentioned, the metaverse is this big buzzy word, but its roots are in something that is a reality that none of us actually want. None of us wants to be in a reality that where the base physical reality sucks, so we're constantly escaping to a digital realm. Which is not to say that there's not plenty of amazing avenues for escapism into the metaverse. But what do you think are the sort of necessary ingredients, either that are in play already or that you hope to see in play, that make sure that the metaverse doesn't become that force in the world? That we focus so much on building a robust virtual world at the expense of the physical world, and how might the metaverse be part of regenerating or restoring what's maybe broken or not working in the physical world? So I realize that's sort of a big question. I'm going to leave that to whoever wants to grab it.
I can start maybe and then hand it off to someone else. But yes, that's true. Coined maybe in a dystopian vision of the world, but I've been incredibly heartened by the community that does come together on the blockchain, and in particular on the Tezos blockchain. There's a difference between a writer sort of envisioning something in his own head, right, and kind of putting that out there as a warning. And then there's all of us who are involved in the blockchain and the ecosystem here, and we can all participate and we can all kind of help write whatever we want. So I've been really heartened by seeing how everyone comes together, for example, right now to address the humanitarian crisis that's happening in Ukraine. There have been a number of incredible, very, very fast, very, very impactful fundraising efforts that have happened on the Tezos blockchain and elsewhere to raise these really important resources and get them delivered in ways that I haven't seen people able to do before. It's much more direct than different kinds of crowdfunding, more than going through these large organizations. So I think that is an example of where putting this all in practice and kind of looking at how we can all work together to bring out the best in each other. That does happen. I think there's obviously there's negative aspects of it too, and I think to what you're alluding to, there is this idea also that we're going to get so entrenched in the virtual aspects of the metaverse that we're going to kind of forget about our bodies and forget about being out in the real world. And one of the things that I find so actually exciting, especially being here in person at an event like this, and every time I go to a crypto conference or an event that's in person, I feel the same way, that there is just this energy and electricity that we all feel when we're together, and we all kind of remind ourselves that this is really important too. And so a lot of what I think I'm trying to do with my poetic experiments, which I think relates to a lot of what everyone here is doing. And by the way, I remember going to Pantone at Art Tech House and those installations, and that was really inspiring to me back in the day when I was thinking about poetry installations as well. But thinking about how we can kind of combine the two things, combine what's happening in a virtual realm, in an augmented reality, and then bring that kind of back down to earth and really engage with what we're doing here. And there's a lot of examples of, again, that happening with different kind of artistic and poetic experiences where we really are just getting this very gut check, really, this really important reminder that it really needs to be a combination of the two. Otherwise, yeah, we're kind of going to be off in some weird realm that, yeah, doesn't make too much sense.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, I totally agree with you, Sasha, there. I think, to start with, I think no technology by itself is either bad or good, right? So it's the applications around it. I was listening to the panel this morning, and there was this artist who was speaking. I'm blanking on the name now, but like, she was talking about how during the COVID times, like she did not have a venue to kind of showcase the art installations and stuff. And she came up with basically a whole virtual experience where they can users can kind of go through the art gallery and kind of look at all of her art installations. So think of this as creating a whole art gallery, which in a physical world would take, at least many thousands of dollars. And and during COVID time, like where everything is closed, no way for her to kind of express that. And but that's where I think by technology itself, I think when it comes to it, the applications of the technology are going to be key. So I think enabling access to people where they can leverage the technology, whether it's the VR world or being able to create those experiences where people can virtually attend and be able to participate in those. I think is going to be key. And when you take it in the global context, not everyone can afford to kind of go to a museum or kind of go to a experience where they can kind of engage with the art. I think this particular metaverse, when it's kind of comes to reality, I think it can open up access to all these constituents, to access and be able to experience that. I think that's going to be key.
Laurie?
Yeah, I have so many mixed feelings. On the one hand, I see this as a support. I think you can never replace physical touch and the physical world and being someplace in person and the materiality of being someplace in person, whether it's hugging somebody, whether it's touching a leaf on a tree. I don't know that we ever lose that desire for that physical aspect. At the same time, you think about you want to make sure that people don't get so isolated that the only encounters they have is in the metaverse. That's their only experience. So I go back to uh, it's about collaboration, it's about community, and what everybody was saying. And I don't know how you stress so that people growing up in a place where the metaverse is just part of their lifestyle don't replace one with the other. I think that's maybe up to us to make sure that it doesn't get lost, or maybe it's something we all naturally feel when we jump into nature, versus putting on a VR headset to go to the Himalayas because we can't actually get there because we can't afford to or we don't have the access to it. So
Community
it's
and
tandem.
collaborate.
It's
Oh,
tandem to me. It's tandem. It has to support each other. It's not one or the other. It's that seamless crisscross
May I
in a
say
sense.
something really quickly? Yeah, no, I agree. I think something that I've been thinking about a lot that I think relates to this is, the idea that language, obviously I think about words a lot, and I often think about language as being a kind of virtual reality or maybe kind of an augmented reality. It's this layering of experience on top of our, lived experience of the world or on top of these inchoate emotions, and we're kind of creating this alternate reality on top, and that's something that at one time language was such a cutting edge technology in and of itself, and now it's just so intrinsic to our experience, and it is like a cornerstone of the human condition to use language to communicate. And I wonder if maybe that's kind of what we're pointing at, is that what's happening in the metaverse, there are elements of it that we kind of bring into this experience, and they feel so different and so novel right now, but we always kind of figure out a way to bring technologies in and bring them in a way that makes us more human and not less. That's kind of been the history of humans since the very beginning, is that we invent technologies and then they make us more human. So I wonder if, I hope that's how this is going to play out.
Mhm.
Fingers crossed.
well, so community and collaboration has come up repeatedly throughout this conversation, and with our final moment, I kind of want to just go a little bit further there, because I think each of you has a unique perspective on collaboration and community building as it relates to the metaverse. In the case of Gap and Pantone, we're talking about iconic brands that have already, existing infrastructure, practices, sort of ways of doing things. I guess what I'm curious from a starting point is when you decided to enter the metaverse, did you have to prop up new teams? Were there organizational changes that had to occur? Were you sort of crisscrossing, as you say, across different departments? Were you engaging with designers or freelancers or et cetera in new ways? Or was it actually more of something that you ended up sort of folding in sort of this new idea into existing practices?
I think, go ahead. So, okay. So I think one thing basically, as I can speak about like at Gap Inc., right? So what I've seen is there is a huge amount of cross collaboration, right? So, and it's a very inclusive environment to begin with, but I think what I've seen or experienced with the Gap Threads project is like, and even talking to my peers at other companies, the projects that are with Metaverse, like they bring along a unique set of talents within the company, like, whether it's bringing the designers, the creative people, people who are designing the fabric, people who are technologists, like, kind of creating this cohesive ecosystem of like, very cross-functional teams that come together to kind of make things happen. So, and it spans the whole spectrum, like, it's been for the last 6 months I've been working on this. Like, I think it's been an amazing ride. Like, and I have almost touched every piece of the company where like everyone is so excited to kind of help collaborate and kind of come together to kind of make things happen. And it spans all the way from design, marketing, technology to the personalization teams, the growth teams, and everyone to kind of think through like how do we kind of think. So there is to your point, like I think now that I reflect on it, like it is a whole community within like that's coming together of varied interest and varied skill sets to kind of design something for the benefit of the outer community that kind of is reflective of like the people that are coming together, right? So pretty fascinating to me that like now that I think of it like and reflect on it, I think it's a very cross-functional, collaborative and cohesive team that's kind of coming together to kind of make things happen. So it is definitely community and collaboration inside to kind of build something that is external facing.
Laurie?
Yeah, I would say the same, but I would also say for Pantone, I mean, we are such a manual company. We have physical tools. That's really how we were born. We did start moving into technology in the 80s with desktop printing, and then in 2000 there were a lot of different changes we made. But this is a big leap, and we have brought in new people to help us get to where we need to in the digital space. It was critical for us, but we are very collaborative as a company. We are global. We work very collaboratively with our offices and even with our clients. Because again, if I go back to the premise of how we work, we listen, but we lead. So seeing what a lot of our clients were doing, and again, I go back to the fashion space, but also the A&D space in particular, people in product design, uh, this is a world that they were entering into. And once we started to begin to see that, we knew we needed to be there because our goal is to ensure that we can provide the right tools for our design-minded community.
And then Sasha, with the verse, do you think that would have existed or existed in the way that it does without the metaverse or without the conversation around the metaverse?
I think the verse is a really sort of interesting and unique example because first of all, it's a poetry gallery. Whether or not it's like on the blockchain or not, like the idea of a poetry gallery, I think is kind of weird to people because I can't think of another example really. But yeah, and then bringing that onto the blockchain and trying to get poets from the traditional publishing world to join us and get onboarded and set up crypto wallets. All of that has been really hard. So I think, if I think about it kind of within this context, thinking about building the team, it's been almost building it from scratch because, normally, as a poet, you might have your editor and a publisher and your group of peers in your writing workshop, and that's kind of your community there, and that's all you really need. I mean, in that sense, it's like what's more analog than writing? It's like all you need is a paper and pencil. But when we're making poetry and poetic experiences on the blockchain, we need to be working with a platform, within an ecosystem. We all need to kind of know what we're doing when it comes to setting up these wallets and how to work with them and how to create splits and how to make sure that everybody who's involved, from the poets to the artists to the creative technologists, and maybe there are publishers and so on and so forth who are also involved with licenses and contracts and all that, but they all need to be kind of onboarded into this ecosystem as well. So we've kind of built all of this from scratch, really, and we're learning it as we go too, which is the fun of it. But it's taught me a lot about the fact that we do, both me and my colleagues, Callan and Anna, and everyone who's in the verse as well. We've all really had to get ourselves up to speed very quickly. And I think now what we've tasked ourselves with is really, now that we kind of know what we're doing a little bit, we're really trying to reach back out and try and teach other writers who want to know more and just feel really intimidated by it, because I think there's a really high level of intimidation right now in that community. So we're really trying to do things like create onboarding workshops and do a lot of hand-holding and really help people set up their wallets and teach them that it's not actually quite so scary once you're in the midst of it.
All right. Yep. And with that, I think
just to add one more thing, Jesse, as you were, Sasha, as you're referring to, I think one thing that we were talking before while we were upstairs. I think one thing that we found as we came into this ecosystem is how collaborative the whole ecosystem has been, and how everyone is eager to help each other out. So I think that's been key, especially with the Tezos community side of things. We have spoken to so many people, and everyone is kind of being open and being able to advise and kind of help us out. So there is not only internal community, but the whole ecosystem, whether it's Kuka, Interpop, or other folks who have helped us be part of this journey and helped us out. So
amazing. Well, thank you all so much. Please join me in a huge round of applause for these amazing folks. And come ask questions.
Thank you, Jesse.